The Compromise of 1820 and 1850 by Alex, Sam, Keith, and Eli. As the United States grew in 1820, so did the problem with slavery. The issue with slavery was that the South wanted more slave states, which would give them more representatives and more power in Congress. This, however, made the North very mad. The North also wanted more states on their side, so they would have more representatives to represent the free states. In one case, Missouri wanted to become a state, but the North disapproved of this because it would then let the Southern states have one more slave state than the free Northern states. To solve this dispute, Henry Clay of Kentucky crafted a compromise. This compromise stated that the United States would admit Missouri to the Union as a slave state and Maine as a free state. At that time, Maine was a part of Massachusetts. This compromise would maintain the balance of power between the free states and the slave states. When Missouri became a state, the southern border was drawn at the 3630 parallel. North of this imaginary line, slavery was banned forever, except for in the state of Missouri. South of the line, all states were allowed to have slaves. This compromise kept the Union together, but pleased no one. 30 years later, in 1850, there was another issue exploding in the southwestern part of the United States. California was ready to become a state after thousands of people rushed there to hopefully find gold and get rich. So, in 1850, California applied as a free state, this leaving the slave states as the minority. Henry Clay of Kentucky helped create the Compromise of 1850. This compromise, however, treated both sides. To please the North, California would become a free state, and the slave trade in Washington, D.C. would be abolished. To please the South, Congress would not pass laws regarding slavery for the rest of the territories won from Mexico, and there would be a stronger law to help slaveholders capture runaway slaves. A man named Stephen A. Douglas from Illinois had the job to either pass the compromise or to discard it in the trash. Douglas ended up passing the Compromise of 18. This compromise, like the first, would keep
Just keep going.
Where if you don't?
would keep the Union together, but it would not bring peace. In 1854, slavery in the North and South still raged on, especially in the Nebraska Territory. A senator named Stephen A. Douglas drafted a bill to organize the Nebraska Territory into two sections. Both of these sections ended up being called the Nebraska Territory and the Kansas Territory. To get the South to vote on this, Douglas suggested that the people decide to vote if each of these states are going to be free or slave. If the bill passed, the Compromise of 1820 would disappear. As Douglas hoped, the bill did pass. This became known as the Kansas-Nebraska Act. When people heard about getting to vote if either states were free or slave, they rushed into the Kansas Territory. Making sure they were going to win, 5,000 Missourians who were pro-slavery traveled and voted illegally in the Kansas Territory. Anti-slavery people started boycotting the official government and made their own, with both sides arguing settlers started to arm themselves. One pro-slavery mob attacked the town of Lawrence, Kansas, along with Eli.
Oh my God.
This became known as the Sack of Lawrence. To revenge the pro-slavery mob, an anti-slavery group went to their pro-slavery neighbors and killed 5 people. This attack became known as the Potawatomi Massacre as the news of violence spread. A civil war broke out in Kansas. It lasted 3 years before ending. This territory became known to be called as the Bleeding Kansas. In the end, nothing of these compromises helped solve problems in the United States. It just ended up recreating new problems and making them worse. With all this leading up to the Civil War, which will be the next big event in the history of the United States.
The end.